So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ines de Klerk, a digital experience advisor at Dropsolid. In this session, I will talk about why UX testing is a must and how you can perform it by yourself based on our own editorial experience, namely our Drupal layout builder. I will explain every step we've been taking during the UX testing process and give you some examples to avoid your common pitfalls, but also to give you good tips about measuring your return on investment and the final result of our UX test. If there are any questions, don't hesitate to ask them at the end of the presentation via our Q&A or ask to me and my colleagues at the virtual booth later on. So, as I already mentioned before, I'm from Dropsolid, the diamond sponsor of this event. We've been established for around 8 years, but are still growing. So Dropsolid makes complex marketing technology accessible for ambitious companies, organizations, and governments to create the best digital version of themselves. So we also provide a digital experience platform. Here you can see it at this slide, which integrates and combines three components. So the marketing automation, the content management, and the customer data platform. But how much I really would like to tell you more about this, I need to continue with my session if I want to be ready in 20 minutes, but you can later on ask questions. So, what is UX testing and why is it important for the UX? You only have 5 seconds to leave a good impression throughout your website, so really make it count. To leave a good impression, you need to have an excellent user experience. The good user experience is achieved through providing the right combination of the needed information, structure, and design. When this is the case, the needs and expectations of the end user are met into a user-friendly website or application, which ensures that they reach their goal in the most efficient way. Some companies indicate that they really know their end users and that their website meets these expectations of them. But do they really? Because if we actually look at the website, the pieces of the puzzle don't always fit nicely. So for the first time, I'm going to advise you to say no to your gut feeling. So that's why UX testing is an absolute must. It is a technique to evaluate a certain website, feature, or complex processes with actual users. So in this test, you can verify the quality of the experience by testing the ease of use, the on-site search, the delivery in multilingual content, and how fast your website loads. So to conclude, we can find out what works and what doesn't. Based on this feedback, you get to know your end user and where you can find a cohesive and enjoyable experience for them. This will also reflect on how they perceive your brand. Fast, responsive, speaking their language, and listening to the customers. So now, how have we done it within Dropsolid? How to get started? With Dropsolid, we followed a certain step-by-step plan. So you can see it in the slide which steps that we followed in order to test and improve our Drupal layout builder. As several already might know, the layout builder is a new alternative of paragraphs. So it is used to help the content editors to easily change and adapt the web page and build blocks in Drupal 9. It also provides a layout user interface, a set of flexible visual design tools that allows content creators and site administrations to customize the layout of a page. So, as a builder was new on the market and we did some customized changes on it, we had no idea if this builder was user-friendly enough. So that's why we decided to take action and start to dig into the world of UX testing. The first step that we have taken is to set our objectives. So, based on the product, feature, or process that you want to test on your website, you need to decide which outcome that they need to achieve. For example, we wanted to test our navigation bar. So the objective was the end user should find their answer to their question quick and via multiple ways of navigating. This step is really important because it defines the further process of the test and more specifically, the task that the end user will perform in the test. Now, the second tip is choose the right method. There are many different types of testing. However, these methods can always be mainly divided into 4 quadrants. This is shown in this slide. On the one hand, you have the distinction between in-person or remote. On the other hand, you have the distinction between moderated and unmoderated. The later distinctions means that to what extent someone will moderate, direct the test, and observe the end users. Most of the time, practical matters such as budget, time, and resources in your company will determine which quadrant suits you best. Of course, each quadrant has its own pros and cons. I've listed all of them for you in the next slides, so you can read them at home, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. The test that we have chosen in Dropsolid is a remote moderated test, and more specifically, a video interview. We did this for two reasons. So firstly, we had the time and resources to actually moderate the test. But secondly, there were more pros and cons in these tests. So the most important thing was that we had the flexibility to make timely adjustment, but also to observe the user in their natural environment, which leads to more objective information. The only thing that we had to take into account was software issues, but that was not a problem. Within this test, we also applied the think aloud method. I don't know if you ever heard of it before, but in this method, users are required to communicate their actions out loud and explain every step and click throughout the entire test. So this is the most valuable method for mapping out the user behavior. On the next slide, here, you can see some of our users at work via a Google Meet. So in order to follow their performed tasks, we have asked their permission to share their screen and camera. Via this way, we could interpret their actions and see their facial expressions more. So this was very successful. Of course, this can only be done if the user had screen sharing software installed, but that's also a thing that you need to cover. Now we move on to the third step, pick the right users to test. So first, you need to know and understand your target audience for whom the website was primarily intended. You can ask questions like, who are they, what do they do, which expertise or experience do they help, in order to this information to be captured within a persona. As the layout builder was mainly for content editors, our target audience were webmasters with experience of Drupal. Besides, depending on the selected test, so as I already mentioned, moderated or not, you also have to define a different number of users. You can do the test with a higher number of users if it's not moderated, but in our case, moderated test, we collected 5 to 8 persons. In order to find these people, there are a lot of different options, networking, your website. So be creative and attract your users with some rewards if they take the test. It is also important to choose your users that you don't know. So otherwise, you have a chance that they will give you a social desirability answer, just because they like you or they don't want to hurt you. In addition, the main rule of thumb would be to find someone who has not tried your application, website, or process before. Because if they already have some background information of your website, it will give you biased information. The last is another critical criterion that we just applied for our tester selection. It is the extroverted. This is because we applied the think aloud method where they have to dare to think out loud. And if they didn't want that, they were not suitable for our tests. Then you have the fourth test. Create a test plan. This test plan is a general document that covers the tasks that the testers need to do, but also the script which describes the course of the test. I've added some hidden slides where you can find our performed test as an example. So first, you have the specific task. As I already mentioned before, these tasks flow from the predetermined objective in phase 1. These tasks are crucial and need to be well defined because they will determine the output of your user test. The principle that you already know, the more the better, does not apply here. Per test, the participant may perform a maximum of 10 tasks per test to prevent habituation. In addition, these tasks should be drafted independently. This ensures that if the participant cannot complete the previous task, that they can still move on to the next one. It is also recommended that you don't mention the answer already in the task, otherwise you have still biased information. Last but not least, rather than simply ordering the test user to do task X with no explanation, It's always better to create a short scenario. It provides a bit of explanation and give context why the user has to do task X. That's why I give you the advice to make clear questions, but always adapt them to the personal situation of the tester. Create a dialogue, get some personal information to make the predefined task more realistic. For example, when you find out that the tester likes to go on a holiday in France and you want to test your search functionality, you can adapt the task, find a car insurance for Belgium to France, and this will have a crucial impact on the performance of the tester. Then the second part is the script. So this script is a sort of roadmap for the things that you say during the test. It gives you guidance, it helps make sure that you say the things that you want to cover, but it always keeps you consistent between sessions. It will make it easier to compare the output of the different sessions on different people. In this slide, I put a possible lineup of how the script should look like. This roughly corresponds to the script that we used within Dropsolid and can also be found in the presentation as an example. So now we move on to the step 5. In this phase, you are actually going to perform the test. Before you actually can perform the test, you should check if you really have completed your checklist. Have you sent an invite with the instruction to your end users? Have you all the material? Have you checked your Wi-Fi connection? It's also a better idea or a good idea to do a trial session with a person that you know, for example, your colleague, in order to avoid having issues during the official user training. If you say 2 times, check, check, the real deal can start and you can start testing. But of course, that's not the end. There's also a step 6, optimize. There's always an important phase of the process. Always keep optimizing and processing the input that has been collected. You have to find patterns in the feedback of your users in order to keep optimizing your website. So as you can see on this slide, it's an iterative process which never stops. So we always go back to phase 1 and do it all over again. So now, you know how to perform a UX test, you have all the steps, and you have created a usable and user-friendly website. But now, how can you find out that these adaptations have led to a higher return on investment? So, you need to measure your success. In order to measure your success, you should take into account 3 levels. These levels can be easily verified by the feedback and notes during the test. So you have effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. We made a board with the tool Miro, so you can see it at this slide. Sorry for the Dutch example, but via this board, we could write every question, every remark, every difficulty of each person that has been made by the different task. And based on this information, we could see were users able to perform the task or find the right information, how long did users take to complete a given task, and how satisfied are the users with the tested experience, which user experience has they have. And if these 3 levels have met your objective that has been set before, then there will be a higher return on investment. However, this is not a fixed story because each company will be different, but we have seen within Dropsolid that if we put the customer at the heart of their experience, we could increase engagement and customer lifetime value. Also, the more usable our layout builder and thus the actual website was, the more attractive it was for the visitors to stay on the website and thus the lower the bounce rate. We also find out that a usable website or application has an indirect or direct positive impact on your visitor purchase intention. We also noticed that simplicity is the golden rule of achieving a usable website. You have a critical factor as convenience and saving time. The latest one is customers who are satisfied with your company with a net promoter score of 8 or higher always result in 30% more marketing qualification needs. I know that some of you don't know net promoter score, so what does it mean? The net promoter score measures to what extent the respondent will recommend a particular company, product, or some service to others, friends, colleagues, etc. So you have 3 groups. You have the promoters, who gave you a score of 9 or 10. So this means that they had a really good user experience on your website, they found their answers on your website, etc. Then you have the passive satisfiers. So these were the respondents who gave a score of 7 or 8 and are just happy with no more. And then you have the detractors. So the respondents who gave a score from 0 to 6, they had a not so good experience. They couldn't find the answer, or they don't find your website user-friendly enough. And the actual score is then the difference between the promoters and the detractors. So within, going back to the previous slide, a score of 8 is always better. But of course, there are also pitfalls or wrong assumptions about UX tests. So I will give you 4 tips to avoid them and to perform a good UX test. So first of all, only test the things that are in scope. Don't test the things that are not provided by your install profile or the things that you're writing your test for. It's also good to have more but smaller test methods than few larger ones. The third tip is the earlier you measure the usability of your website, the sooner any errors will be uncovered, and thus the lower the cost will be to resolve them. The fourth advice that I can give you is a common mistake is to run usability tests only once. So I already mentioned to you that it's an iterative process where you have to re-examine each insight. You always go back to phase 1 to test it again with another group of users. So you always keep on testing, and it's a long-term plan. So now I give you all the information of how to perform a UX test and why it's important. But I can guess that you're all excited now to see the final result of our own Drupal layout builder, to give you a more concrete example. So first of all, during the UX tests, we found some pain points that were common to all testers. So we found out some bugs, ambiguities, but also the button to see preview was not feasible enough. So the first picture where you see the red button. Also, Webmaster wished to be able to edit live and preview and not just seeing a title field or text block. So this was really crucial. And that's why we decided, based on the major pain points, to create several mockups. With these mockups, we tested again the preferences of our end users and asked their feedback. This method was very successful because the more concrete our proposal was, the easier it was for the client or end user to say his opinion and preferences. Because if we just asked their opinion, it requires a lot of effort, and we hadn't enough feedback. So if you can see here, we used different colors. So if you look at the back of the mockup, here is no color. Then we moved on to light blue. Then we also showed a third mockup with dark blue and a possible way to edit the context in a more realistic and clear setting. So after this input, after all the feedback that we have got, we adjusted the layout builder again. That's why we come up to the next slide and see the final result. So we can see that none of the mockups that we have made was good. So we used the colors black and more dark colors. Also, we had another way to make the editing flow a lot more easier. So you can see here that you can already see the text and not just the title block, etc. So you can see that it really helps. It makes it more user-friendly. And there are just some things that you don't ever think about it that should change. And that's why the next steps in the coming weeks, we start again with the user test on our advanced layout builder. So at Dropsolid, we already had a number of customers who are working with our layout builder. So we are going to ask them about their experience, their feedback on the adjustments, and just always go back to phase 1. We just restart it. So we do the iterative process. But we also have other customers, they didn't choose the layout builder. So this also gives a lot of crucial information to keep improving the builder, why they didn't like it, why they are not using it. So these are the next steps, and shows you again that it's really important to give you a usable site and to always put the customer at the heart of the experience. If you want more information, more content-wise, more technical about our Drupal layout builder, I can accord you to just one my guy, my colleague Frederik Wouters. He is also one of the speakers here at DrupalCon. So you can see it's at Hop and Tree next Thursday, 7th of October. Or if you wish to attend a UX test performed by Dropsolid, you can always contact us via this link or just send me an email or a message on the virtual booth. We can always schedule a meeting. Now, I see that there are still some time left, so if there are any questions, you can ask them now. Thank you all already for listening to me. I will now turn on my camera so it's more personal to see. I will see. Thanks, Erica. Are there any questions? You can always ask them in the chats. If not, yeah, I think it's good and it was really clear to you guys. So I hope you have still a lovely day at Trupacom.